Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Explainer. Today we are untangling what might literally be the ultimate philosophical paradox of our lives. You know, it's that nagging question that's probably popped into your head while scrolling through self-help articles. Should you radically accept who you are and just be yourself? Or should you be striving for something higher and give up being yourself? It sounds like a total riddle, I know, but the answer we pulled from the source material today is incredibly profound.
Well, here's where it gets fascinating. We found a glaring, explicit contradiction from the exact same author, Shufeng. Back in March 2021, he wrote this piece explicitly stating that giving up being oneself is the superior way of cultivation. But then, fast forward just a couple of years to November 2023, and he publishes another article firmly declaring that you should, quote, just be yourself.
So, what gives, right? Which viewpoint is actually the correct one? Are we supposed to relentlessly cling to our own nature or abandon it entirely? Before we dive any deeper into this explainer, I want you to mentally commit to one side of this paradox. Seriously, pick a side in your head right now, because we're going to build an absolutely ironclad case for both.
All right, let's start with Section 1, the case for being yourself.
This first argument is highly pragmatic. It's deeply logical and rooted in the idea that we are fundamentally bound by our inherent nature. The logic dictates that every species can only ever be itself because it physically cannot transcend its own kind. I mean, think about it. A crow can't just wake up and decide to be a parrot, no matter how much it wants to. A sheep isn't going to become a wolf, and a fly definitely can't magically transform into a bee. Those desires, they're completely unattainable. No matter the effort, nature dictates one simple rule: just be yourself.
But it doesn't just stop at different species. Even within the exact same species, roles are often totally predetermined. Take a worker ant or a bee, for instance. If an ordinary worker aspires to be the queen, well, it doesn't matter how hard it tries. It doesn't matter how much it learns or how much effort it puts in. It's biologically impossible. The conclusion is kind of inescapable here. One can only ever be oneself.
Okay, so let's bring this nature analogy directly back to us humans. Just like those bees and birds, we all have innate differences. Some folks are born with these absolutely beautiful, melodious singing voices, and others, well, maybe they should stick to singing in the shower, right? Some are born into massive privilege, while others are struggling from their very first breath. Every single person is incredibly unique. And just like that sheep trying to be a wolf, no matter how hard you try to imitate someone else, you literally cannot fundamentally become them. We see this play out all the time in the practical, grounded world of business, too. Two people can do the exact same thing in the exact same era using the exact same methods. Yet it results in massive profits for one person and devastating losses for the other. Learning and effort are absolutely crucial, for sure, but plagiarizing or imitating others simply doesn't work. When you look at all this evidence, from nature to biology to the economy, isn't this logic undeniably sound? It seems incredibly obvious that you should just be yourself.
But wait, Section 2, the case for selflessness.
Now, if you were feeling pretty comfortable with that be yourself argument, brace yourself for a little cognitive dissonance, because the source material builds an equally ironclad case for the exact opposite approach. To do this, it looks to the wisdom of historical spiritual leaders. Take this really stark message from Christ Jesus. If anyone to become my followers, let them deny themselves, and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. The literal prerequisite for salvation here is giving up the self entirely.
And this exact same thread weaves through completely different traditions. According to the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni, a bodhisattva, which is a person on the path to awakening, only truly becomes one when they thoroughly understand the Dharma of no self. In Buddhism, reaching enlightenment actually requires the complete dissolution of the concept of you.
To cap off this spiritual sequence, we have this incredibly profound observation from Celestial Laozi. He asks, is what we value and what we fear within ourselves? We have fears because we have a self. When we do not regard that self as a self, what have we to fear? The logic here is just beautiful. The only way to fulfill your true wishes and the only way to accomplish your ultimate purpose without fear is to be entirely selfless.
So let me ask you again, isn't this viewpoint of giving up being oneself also completely correct? I mean, when you read those quotes, they resonate deeply. They feel profoundly true. But now, we are stuck. Being oneself is right, and giving up being oneself is also right. How in the world do we resolve two mutually exclusive paths that both feel absolutely necessary?
Which brings us to Section 3,
A matter of aptitude. The text actually resolves this tension brilliantly by focusing on exactly who the advice is meant for.
Imagine telling a 5-year-old kid, go play. That makes perfect sense for where they are in life, right? But imagine giving that exact same advice to a 30-year-old adult right in the middle of their career, or an 80-year-old. It becomes totally absurd. The identical advice is perfectly suitable for one person and completely ridiculous for another, simply based on their stage of life. We can look at this through what the text calls the architecture of guidance. Any qualified master or teacher knows that a one-size-fits-all approach is doomed to fail. You have to tailor your guidance to the material of the student. Think about building a house. Beams require beam standards. Pillars require pillar standards. Rafters require rafter standards. You literally cannot impose a uniform standard on every single piece of wood, or the whole house is going to collapse. People are the exact same way.
So how do we apply this? Section 4. Tailoring the guidance.
Here is the unified theory that finally bridges the gap. For the general public, ordinary folks just navigating the practical challenges of daily survival in their careers, the correct advice is absolutely, be yourself. Do not fantasize about being someone else. Embrace your unique strengths and accept your natural limitations. But for exceptional individuals, those who are actively trying to transcend worldly desires and aspire for spiritual enlightenment, the instruction changes entirely. They must be cautioned to give up being oneself and adhere to heavenly standards rather than personal, limited insights. Worldly survival requires embracing your nature, while spiritual transcendence requires abandoning it.
Which brings us to the final question you really got to ask yourself today. Based on everything we've just unpacked in this explainer, are you currently focusing on building a solid foundation as yourself in the practical world, or have you reached the point where you are ready to transcend the self? The paradox is officially solved, but the choice of which path you're on right now, that is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this text and keep asking the big questions.